And we're live. How
What
we
is up,
doing, everybody?
everybody?
Heck yeah.
Welcome to the big one.
The big one. The stream to end all streams. The last stream. The last co-op stream, the movie. I
This-
can't remember we were looking for a movie, maybe at Jake's house or something. I
Mhm.
can't remember what it was, but I saw the last Naruto movie. And I was like, man, that brought me
What a
back.
what an experience that
What a
was.
moment in cinema history, honestly. Here,
Honestly,
I'm gonna do a little sound check real quick.
yeah.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
chat it
I'll
up with
introduce
chat real quick.
everybody.
All right, so be right
Yeah.
back.
So, if you're new to us, the Co-op Bros, or just haven't watched any of our streams over the years, we've started doing this tradition where we do our 2020 blank in gaming. We used to do a video version of this where we went through every single game that we played, co-op and otherwise, because we actually play just as many non-co-op games as we play co-op games every year, and it was kind of a bummer to never get to talk about it. So we used to do this big video series, but having that timed out with the end of the year on top of the top 10 co-op games, which was a big video for us, and obviously we're people that have holidays and families and whatnot, was just like too much. I mean, it was a video that was like a 50+ minute video. The editing on it was like, it took everything in me to do.
Yeah.
So Gabe had the genius idea of, let's keep doing it. Let's turn it into a stream and just focus on our top 15, but then do some other fun things too. So that's what this is. It's become probably my second favorite stream that we do every year besides our Fantasy Critic Draft. I love it. This is going to be a good time. I'm glad you guys are here to enjoy it with us. So yeah, that's our 2024 in games, and I am pumped to get us going, bro.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, doing that one video, man, just took so much work and editing. I think last year we really found like a cool groove was doing it live. So yeah, we got a couple different surprises. But yeah, before we get going, just want to do a little bit of housekeeping on upcoming videos. We just put out the monthly earlier today, so definitely check that out if you haven't watched it already, because it covers a ton of news from the Game Awards. And spoiler alert, there are some really cool announcements, so you're gonna want to be in the know there. And yeah, that was pretty much our last real video. And then we got some stuff cooking for January for the new year already. I think our first video of 2025 will be our top 10 upcoming co-op games of 2025, right? So that should be really, really fun. And then we'll be following that up with a video that I think we've been doing. I think maybe this is the third year we're doing it. Is this the third year we're doing this one every major? I feel like it is.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's our third year.
So this is this one video that we call every major co-op game coming in 2025. So we kind of do our top 10, which are the ones that, like, you know, we sort of feel like from our own personal preference, but then also what we see in the industry and in our sort of niche corner of the industry for co-op, what we see as like the top 10 upcoming games. And then we do a follow-up to that where we cover every major co-op game. So some indies, some AAA obviously, but not like any little random games, like things of note that you want to know about. And usually that turns out to be like 30-ish games. I think this year it's going to be close to 40. So we go through them really quick so that it's not like literally an hour video. But it is really fun.
Think of it as a catalog with just the very bare minimum details you need to know about everything, so you have everything kind of figured out for the upcoming year. And other than that, we of course have some big games that we're going to cover in the first quarter of the year. For the ones that we know we're for sure going to try to cover would be like Hyper Light Breaker in the next couple of weeks. That comes out into early access, so that's really nice for us to have a game that early in the year that we can for sure cover. We're very excited for that. Monster Hunter Wilds, of course we're going to cover that. Split Fiction, we're definitely going to cover that. A couple other ones that we're like hoping to, like Sniper Elite Resistance, maybe Orcs Must Die Death Trap. Dune Crawl's getting a demo in February. And of course there's going to be other games that are going to be dropping in February that don't have dates as of today, but I guarantee that in the early February we're going to have more games than just Monster Hunter Wilds at the end of the month. So
for sure.
But those are the ones that we're looking to cover. So definitely plenty to be looking forward to on the channel. So stick around, hit the bell icon as they say in the business.
That's right. So I think you already explained what we're doing, right? That we're going over our top 15 games. Yeah. So a little sort of behind the scenes on it. Andrew and I use this app called GG, and it's this sort of like video game tracking / backlog app. And so we track all the games that we play on there, both co-op and single player. And then we both kind of create our own sort of list every year. And so, rather than going through every single game we've played, we're just going through each other's, both of our top 15 games. And I mean, we both play around like 30 games, give or take, every year. So like, I think doing like half of that list makes sense. I think like the worst game on this list, on the number 15, is still kind of like an 8 out of 10 for both of us. No 7 out of 10s are on our list right now. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through our 15, our top 15 games of this year, and we'll talk about it. I'll put some trailers up, and we'll also give our little scores and just kind of give a bit of like why we enjoy this game, why it's on the list. So feel free to comment what you think. Should that game be on the top 15? Do you like it? Do you hate it? And what would have made your list? And yeah, let's get it going, bro.
Awesome. I will start us off. Do you have me going first on all these with the tabs?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll start us off. So as Gabe said, we're in the 8 out of 10 range, and I gave Balatro a 8 out of 10, which actually is almost kind of low considering it was a Game of the Year contender. I think it had like a 90 plus on OpenCritic. I really liked it. I thought it was great. That's what we think of as an 8 out of 10. So that's not a bad thing for it to be in the number 15 spot, to be a great game. But I personally found that as much as there was really awesome highs with Balatro, and there definitely is, there was also times where I was like, I'm just like going through a rut. I kind of keep doing the same hand over and over again, or like the same build in a run over and over again. And so I'd stop playing, and then I'd kind of sneak back into it, and I'd get back into it again. And it was like one of those games where I came back to it on and off throughout the year. And I really liked it. I thought it was great. I was totally okay seeing it up for Game of the Year. I could totally get why. It's kind of funny because I always thought that the soundtrack was like, okay, the soundtrack's like fine. I don't really think much of it. And then I heard the Game of the Year orchestrated version of it, and I was just like, whoa. Never mind. I was sleeping on that. It's one song throughout the whole game. I was sleeping on that one song. So yeah, Balatro was very good. I'm glad I played it. And it got plenty of praise, and it was all deserved. So very good.
No, that's
What's
great.
up, Urban, in the chat?
Yeah, shout out to Urban in the chat, and anyone else, please shout out what you think of the games that we're playing. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, a little note on this one. I do want to play this, and honestly, if our friend Jake is watching, the fact that Jake is playing Metaphor, I just feel like I only owe him that I should play Balatro. So I'm thinking I'm gonna go pick it up on Switch soon.
Yeah, Hit Star Studios agrees with me. It's one song, but it's a banger. Yeah, it's so funny that I needed to hear it in the orchestra to be like, oh wait, it is a banger. It just like didn't hit with me, because when you're playing, it kind of falls into the background a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
And also to answer the question, we have not played Abiotic Factor. That sounds super familiar though, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of we've gotten a lot of people commenting on it. It's a co-op survival game. You know it if you saw it. Yeah, I think it's an early access. It looked interesting. To be completely honest, it probably just hasn't been totally on our radar. I was thinking that we were like dying to play, and also to be fully transparent, we just kind of have been a little over survival games this year. We started with like 2 big survival games, and we played a lot of survival games last year too. But we'll probably follow up on it this year. It has gotten a lot of buzz, so
yeah, it's good to know that it's in early access. That we'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. Cool. Okay, well, we're gonna move on to Gabe's 15th game, the bottom of his list, but it doesn't mean it's a bad game. Gabe, what did you have as number 15?
Yeah, I had Sons of the Forest, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, an 8 out of 10. Yeah, this is a really fun game, actually. I was really excited that we got back into it this year. So we played this last year. We played the Forest a couple years back. I was super excited to play the Forest. And yeah, we played this last year for its early access launch, and then followed up and dove back in for its 1.0 launch this year, because they honestly added a lot. I mean, they completed the story for one, which was kind of the thing that I was most interested in general. And then they added so many fun sort of vehicles and gameplay things. They added the hang glider. In general, I just kind of felt like going back to it, I was like, wow, this really feels like a complete experience. So I guess to talk about it from just, you know, the whole game, the game as a whole, it really is, I think, like my favorite survival game. In the sense that, like, I think to me, like, a good survival game is only as good as its setting, and this is just like the most immersive like survival setting in my opinion. Like, the lighting engine in this game is just insane. I specifically picked the 4K trailer to show off right now. The snow, the seasons, the cannibals, and like the
foliage.
Yeah, the foliage, the way the cannibals behave, and they have like super dynamic like behaviors. I don't know. I get like super lost in this world, and you know, obviously it's a bit of a horror game, so it feels super eerie when you're out in like the caves and everything. But I think all of that would have been fine. Like if you just nailed all of that, it's like, that's great. But then on top of that, it has just this like amazing story that I found super compelling, and the way they sort of delivered it. You know, the first game, the Forest, like ends with like a huge sort of like, oh my god, that's crazy. And I was wondering if this game would be able to top that, and they do. They go to like an even crazier place. Playing this was our friend Garrett. We were both like, you know, I mean, we're making theories throughout the game, which is super fun when you find these little clues. And so at the end, when we sort of get to see this crazy revelation, we're like, oh my god, this is like crazy. We're losing our minds. So yeah, super fun game. I think that's what's super unique about this game. I'll end with this. Is that, like, yeah, you could just play it as a survival game, just kind of build and, you know, see how long you can last. But then there is this like really satisfying like story, which I think they really improved upon. It was the sequel from the first game of like telling you where to go, following the GPS, and like you know, we only had like I think one session where we were kind of like mildly lost. So yeah, very cool game, and I'm happy to see a co-op game make my top 15.
Yes. Several co-op games will make the top.
Yes.
All right, next up will be our number 14. We're still in the 8 out of 10 range, and my 14th game on my top 15 is actually Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Kind of crazy, but we both haven't played Call of Duty in years. Came back to it finally this year because of Game Pass, really, and seemed like there was good buzz going into this Call of Duty. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, the reason I gave it an 8 out of 10 and I thought it was great is because each part of it, like, there's no part of it that wasn't really fun. Like, we played a lot of the zombies with our friends, Jake and Christian, had a great time. We played a lot of the multiplayer and had a great time. I played through the whole campaign and again, had a great time. And so it wasn't like none of that necessarily went above that. It kind of got close. Like, the campaign had a couple of missions that were like above and beyond what you would expect, but then had some missions that were just like, it was fine. Same thing with the multiplayer, where it's like, it's still the same. It's really fun, but it just kind of felt like the same as what it was when I was a kid. And I feel like the zombies was the one mode where maybe that went above an 8 out of 10. I felt like they really delivered on like both maps and like really balanced play and everything, and brought that mode back to what it used to be. But overall, it was such a solid package, and the fact that you get all of that into one game in like the modern day is kind of crazy. Like, no other shooter does that, where they give you a PvP mode that's fully fleshed out, a single player campaign that's fully fleshed out, and a PvE mode.
Yeah.
It's like, I always say the only other game that does that is Splatoon, which is crazy. But I wish that more games did do that. It's just that most games are free to play, unfortunately, unlike Call of Duty. But yeah, so super weird to have Call of Duty back in the top 15 for the first time, and it has to be 10 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a great time with this, and so I think it deserved to be there, and I'm glad that we got to all play it together. So
yeah, this isn't on my list, but not because it didn't make the list, because I haven't reviewed it yet. I've been wanting to play the campaign. I think I'm going to play it. You know, maybe these next sort of weeks when work is still maybe a little light as we start the new year. But yeah, I think this totally deserves a spot in the top 15. Like, just zombies alone was so much fun. So
yes,
good
Pascal
stuff.
agrees. Really solid COD. And yeah, if you think about it, Irvin's right. The battle royale is essentially part of the experience.
Yeah,
because
we haven't even.
When the game comes out, the battle royale gets updated.
It's true.
So that is part of it. So it's kind of crazy what Call of Duty has become and how complete of a package it can really be. I mean, there's plenty of people that's all they play. So.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's great.
All right. So next up is Gabe's 14th overall, and that is
1000X Resist. So this was an indie game that I came across from this other YouTuber, which I think his name is Gaming in the Wild. Let me double check that just to make sure I get that right. But this is a guy who is he's like an Icelandic guy. And he just posts some really great videos of just kind of covering indie games that you don't really hear too much about. I think he actually has a podcast, and then he sort of spun this off into like kind of covering games. But yeah, he kind of put me onto this game called 1000S Resist. It's very much an artsy sort of narrative game, which do tend to be my cup of tea. I'm kind of always willing to at least give those a try. I'll tell a funny story about this game. So I originally bought it on Switch because I tend to play a lot of indie games on my Switch. And the graphics were actually really terrible on Switch, which is a bummer because it does tend to have like some pretty striking graphics and like a decent amount of fidelity, even though most of it is just kind of the art direction is kind of what's carrying it forward. And I was like, dang, well, like I feel like I'm not getting the true experience of this game. And so I did manage to refund the game on Switch, which is unheard of. I emailed
notoriously difficult to do with Nintendo.
I like emailed them, and maybe some other people have had a similar experience, and then I ended up playing it on Steam. But I mean, yeah, it's hard to talk about this game because like the story is kind of the big part of it, so I don't want to spoil anything. But it is like a super cool sci-fi story, and then the gameplay part of it is kind of interesting as well. You kind of play as this character who like dives into like the memories of other people, and you're kind of like an archivist, and it's sort of this post-apocalyptic thing, and so you're kind of like piecing together a mystery. The soundtrack is really cool. So I think altogether there's just enough going on for me that I was like, cool story. I like the sci-fi universe of it, and the gameplay was like engaging enough. So it's not like the best sort of narrative artsy game that I've played, but it was super unique. It did kind of keep me thinking after a while, and it's the first game from this one studio called Sunset Visitor, which I thought was just such a cool name for a studio. And so I became super impressed by it. I think their next game is probably going to be even better, actually. So, and yeah, this wasn't a lot of people sort of like hidden gems. I even kind of funny was talking about it at some point. So I was happy I got to play it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more common hidden gem games. Urban asked, what's the estimated playtime?
It's super short. It's only like 3 hours or something. Here, I'll look on my Steam real quick, actually. I don't think I missed anything that was the stream. Here it is. Playtime. Oh, actually, no, maybe it is a little bit longer. No, it's a lot longer than I thought. I think it's 10 hours. Why did I think 3 hours? I think I think of a different game. Anyways, I had 10 hours of playtime on my clock. So
nice. All right, next game is my 13th overall. Still in the 8 out of 10 range for our number 13s, and this is the first one that we're going to be mentioning twice. So it's on my list, and it'll later be on Gabe's list. That's going to happen a few times, and more often as we get through this list, that's going to happen a lot, really. But this first one to do it is going to be Animal Well. Animal Well is a very, very special game. Probably gonna go down as one of the better Metroidvanias ever released, and I fully support that. I would say the reason it's only an 8 out of 10 for me is that the puzzles didn't totally hit, and I actually think I watched probably 1, maybe 2 reviews, and even just that amount of footage, 1 to 2 reviews, was enough for me to like lose out on a little bit of the discovery, which is such a big part of this game, is the discovery aspect. But even still, even with the puzzles not always hitting for me, and even with that part of like sort of being spoiled, not really, but just even to the tiniest degree you can get spoiled, made me like it a little bit less, but I still loved it. It was such a cool experience where like so many people were playing at the same time and discovering the puzzles together, and that was the same for us. Gabe definitely beat it before me, but then that meant I could go to him and like just like sort of bounce my thoughts off of him as he was playing it.
Yeah.
And of course, it's just like the most impressive little game that it's like 35 megabytes or something, and made by obviously one guy. It's crazy.
Unreal.
And what's really cool about Animal Well is even though I didn't get to the, it's described as an onion where there's level 1, 2, 3, and 4 of puzzles, and it's like I got through like maybe level 2 ish. And then like level 3 is crazy, and level 4 is like, how did anybody ever pull that off?
Yeah.
I watched the videos on like the people who did pull off level 3 and level 4 because I knew I was never gonna do it. And it's just like even watching those videos still like added to my enjoyment of the experience. And so I would suggest that if you're like me, where it's like I'm never gonna solve like the crazy puzzles, just go watch it. You mean you're not gonna do it, so go and see what they are because that alone is enjoyable. So yeah, Animal Well definitely gonna be on a lot of top 10 lists. Just barely missed out on my top 10, but is here on my top 15. Both Hit Start Studios and Pascal agree Animal Well is awesome. So
no, that's great. Yeah, we'll circle back to my thoughts on Animal Well.
In the meantime, Gabe's number 13 is...
Yeah, my number 13 was actually a pretty recent game that I circled back to, which was Alan Wake 2, the Lake House DLC. Alan Wake 2 was my game of the year last year, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it was.
Yes, it was.
I'm a huge fan of Remedy. I'm a huge fan of Control. So super happy to play Alan Wake 2 last year. And then I played both of the DLCs this year. This is the second of two. The first one came out, I think, in the summer, and then this one came out in the fall. The first one, ironically, was better reviewed, but I found it to be pretty disappointing. It just felt like it didn't run with like the concept that that it was given, and it didn't like add much to the story. Whereas this DLC, the second one, was actually worse reviewed, but I actually liked it a lot better. It was kind of funny. But this was cool because, if you haven't played any other games, it's kind of hard to talk about, but like, they're essentially, between Control and Alan Wake 2, they've created what they call the Remedy Connected Universe. So they've essentially created their sort of like MCU-like game universe. And I think what's really genius about it is that like, MCU movies kind of found a way to talk about the upcoming movies by doing the sort of like post-credit scenes. And what Remedy's been doing now is that their sort of like post-credit scene mechanism is the DLC, which I think is like really dope to think about actually. So like Control 2 had like its second DLC, and that set up Alan Wake 2. And now Alan Wake 2's like second DLC is setting up Control 2, which is like, this is so dope. Like I love that we have like an MCU like video game universe, and that it just happens to be something that's like totally up my alley actually. Very like X-Files, Twin Peaks-esque. But yeah, if you liked Alan Wake 2, I think this DLC is great just because it's sort of like it adds a little bit of Control, but it's very much still a horror DLC, and it was very creepy, and like I felt very unsettled a lot of the times. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I won't spoil too much, but it is fun, and it wasn't super long. It wasn't super hard either, which I enjoyed. It was just sort of like a fun, scary romp. Yeah, that was the Lake House.
I wish I could play Alan Wake 2, but I'm too much of a weenie. Irvin goes, how could you include DLC in Game of the Year list?
It's true.
Obviously, he's joking, but we'll come back to that later because the most infamous version of that will peek its head later. And I think we have another DLC on here as well on your list.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but yeah, I kind of in the mind of I empathize with people who don't like that, but I don't really care. If Erdtree deserved it, I thought it deserved it. So anyway, we're on to number 12. We're still in the 8 out of 10s. And my number 12 was Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. This is a game that should be so much higher than it is on both of our lists.
It's true.
But you have to keep in mind the experience that we had playing this at launch. It was terrible. I mean, it truly was so overwhelmingly frustrating to just barely, we barely were able to play this game for the first 2 to 3 to 4 plus weeks. The servers were awful, but when we could play it, it was an absolute blast. Like some of the most fun combat, like it's very basic combat really when you get down to it, but like still so fun. You could keep playing it for hours on end and it would never get old. An actual campaign that felt like a normal story co-op campaign, didn't have any progression to it, nothing crazy. It was just like, here's a story campaign that you can play with your friends. That was super sick. The co-op mode in it had like actual classes that work together well and like really well thought of objectives, really good progression. So much and beautiful art direction, like just one of the most like stunning games you'll ever play.
And like graphically,
it's just
like, really good graphically too. Like one of the best.
Yes,
yeah, it's insane.
Easily. So at the end of the day, it really should be significantly higher on our list. It probably could have and should have won the #1 spot for our co-op game of the year, but it just was such a frustrating experience to try and get past the servers, and that plays a huge part in co-op, obviously.
Yeah.
That we just could not find a way to like get it past that. We just couldn't justify it, I guess was the word I was looking for. So yeah, love it. Glad it probably is way more playable now. Wish it was that way when we had to play it to cover it for you guys. But such a freaking awesome game. Yeah, Irvin agrees. Servers were what put him off the game too. Yeah. It would have put us too, but we had to play it because we knew we needed to cover it. Because we knew it was great. It's just we couldn't play it. So
yeah. For
all
sure.
Right.
Yeah, we'll circle back
and that
to
will
my
come
thoughts
up
on this too.
Yeah, that'll come up in just a few minutes for Gabe. But in the meantime, here's our second DLC. Go ahead with your number 12, Gabe.
Yeah, my number 12 is Destiny 2's The Final Shape. I was wondering, I think this is just shy of making your list. I think this would have been now your number 16. But man, this was honestly such a good time. You know, we've been burned by Destiny in the past. We did get this experience of like getting into the Final Shape actually started off on the wrong foot.
Awful.
Because we had the bright idea of being like, you know, we should play like the bad DLC that everyone hated before, just to kind of get all the context of it, right? And also because
and to get the class.
Yeah, we thought that you had to play that DLC to get the class because that's normally how Destiny 2 does things. And so we did play what was it even called? Lightfall. We played Lightfall,
yeah.
And yeah, it was just awful. And you didn't even have to even play it to get the class, which is the worst thing to find out at the end. Ran into some stupid bugs, whatever. So we were already starting off on the wrong foot with Final Shape, and the fact that this one is over so quickly is a testament to just how great this DLC. I mean, truthfully, this was the best of Destiny. This is like what it should have been all along. This is what everyone knew it could be. You know, we got a glimpse of this with Witch Queen and even Taken King, and it's a bummer that it couldn't always sustain this bar, but I'm so happy that they were able to land the plane. And that last mission is just like amazing.
One of the best missions you'll play in a video game.
No, legitimately, like our jaws were on the floor. It's just like
the best way to describe it is it's like playing the final scene in Endgame as a video game. And you are in it and you are feeling it.
It really was that. Like that's the best way to describe it. Man, it was awesome. So definitely deserves its flowers. I'm glad it's my number 12.
Yeah, just barely missed my list because of how frustrating it was to get into it, and Destiny 2 was doing everything it could to make us not enjoy the Final Shape.
Yeah.
But the Final Shape was so good that we did end up enjoying it. So yeah, just barely missed my list. I ended up playing a little bit more Balatro over the winter break, and I was like, I gotta get that in there.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, next up we're on to number 11. This will be our last one where we both have 8 out of 10s on the list. Actually, I thought I gave my number 11 a 9 out of 10. Maybe I changed it. So my number 11 is Sons of the Forest. So this is another one of our repeats. Our first, I think, you've now heard us talk about twice repeat. Yeah. As Gabe said, Sons of the Forest. I think for like, if you put them all down together, I think it's one of, if not the best survival game. You could just play it where you just make like this insane base and you just mess with all these stupid cannibals and you just have a good time doing that, or you could like solve the mystery of the island, or you could just like go off and do all the crazy stuff like find a golf cart that you could ride, or a one wheel, or a sled. Like all that stuff is in the game. It's goofy, it's scary, it's a mystery, it's like always interesting, and it's absolutely beautiful. I still feel like it doesn't quite have like the combat down, but like compared to the original Forest, it's significantly better.
Yeah.
And it really is just significantly better in all ways, but especially in the combat. So,
yeah, I mean, one thing we didn't mention too is just like the crafting system. Like such a cool part of this game that like no other game has really done something like it, and the second one made it even better. Yeah,
the fact that you can play this whole game in 8-player co-op and it works pretty well. I think it's 8 players.
Yeah, it is.
It's just like it really is like a co-op all-timer. It'll always be very highly regarded by both of us. I either gave it a 9 and then went back to an 8, or gave it an 8 and then went back to a 9. I'm like always between those two.
Yeah.
A part of that is because we played at early access and at 1.0, so we had like we didn't have the full content for most of our experience, which is always tough. But yeah, could not suggest it enough. And it's not too scary. If I could play it, it means it's not too scary.
It's true.
So yeah.
That's great. I love that. Cool.
All right. What is your number 11, my dude?
So my number 11, I played a lot of indies this year. I would honestly say this is probably my indie game year. And I played a lot of what I would call Gabe games. And Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is very much a Gabe game. Even though I will say the thing about this game, because it really should be higher on my list, but it was both the most frustrating game I played this year, but also one of the most satisfying. So Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a puzzle game at heart. That's what you're doing. But it does kind of have this story. The art direction is just fucking amazing, honestly. Just like so freaking cool looking. Never seen a game do this like sort of black and white sort of visual thing quite this way. But what's cool about it from like a puzzle perspective is that the first thing that you see in the game is that your character is instructed to check the glove box in their car. And you grab the glove box and you find this note where the developers themselves in a sort of cheeky way are telling you that you should use a real life notebook like as you play the game. And I knew this kind of going into it as well when I watched reviews. And I mean, I wish I could show you like my iPad, but I'm actually currently using it. But like that was like my real life notebook. And I mean,
I've seen it. It was pages of notes.
It was crazy. It was just like I'm taking all these notes on like Greek letters and like moon phases and like all this crazy shit. And I mean, it was awesome. It was really awesome. And again, at the same time, some of the puzzles, specifically the ones that involved math, because I'm not great at maths. I've never been great at math. I was like kind of frustrated by, but by the end, I really did really like this game. And like the ending was awesome. The soundtrack is part of my like video game soundtrack playlist. So yeah, it's a good one. I think if you like puzzle games, if you like sort of weird, esoteric, artsy games, I totally recommend it. It was great on Switch too. So really interesting experience again of a game making you sort of forcing you to use like pen and paper in some form to kind of get through the puzzles. But yeah,
sounds like a very unique experience
for sure.
Okay, we are getting on to the actual top 10. This is our number 10. It is the first 9 out of 10 that I gave this game, and Gabe also did too. And that is Cat Quest 3, our winner for the co-op game of the year. But you might be wondering, as you see some more co-op games show up later on my list, why is Cat Quest 3 lower if we gave it the co-op game of the year? That's because for the co-op game of the year, we're still thinking of not necessarily our personal taste, but what we think would be the co-op game of the year for more than necessarily just ourselves. Which one do we think like most encapsulates co-op in such a special way? Yeah. Which I think Cat Quest 3 did, because it had the local co-op. And that was one of the only really good local co-op games that come out this year. And it was so accessible. Like, Gabe and I played this together as 2 adult men who play Dark Souls games, and we loved it. But I could have played this with my wife. I could have played this with like my younger cousin that loves to play games. Yeah. I could have played this with anybody, and I think I would have had a good time. I love this anecdote where my sister-in-law and her boyfriend plays a lot of games, and I played games with him. He's a super cool guy. But my sister-in-law does too, but like more casual games and whatnot. And they actually saw our Cat Quest 3 review, played it, and we're like, hey, this game was awesome. Like, thank you for suggesting it on your channel. We listened, we played it, and we thought it was so good. So yeah, Cat Quest 3 we did not expect it to be nearly as good as it was, but there was not a second that went by while playing it where we weren't like, wow, this is so much better than we thought it would be. So That's why I got our co-op game of the year, not our personal game of the year, but our co-op game of the year was Cat Quest 3. So that's my number 10.
Heck yeah.
And the first 9 out of 10 on either of our lists. So Gabe's next game, his number 10 is still an 8 out of 10. And which one is that?
Yeah, my number 10 is Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2. Absolutely love this game. I agree with what you said, everything you said, but specifically, I do think that sort of the server issues did hamper our experience. Because you got to remember, the server issues not only hampered our enjoyment of in every aspect of the game, because we couldn't even play the campaign. We had issues like linking up with the campaign as well, which is a huge bummer, obviously. So really,
we would sit for hours,
yeah,
and just not be able to play. It was awful.
So I think because of that, again, you try to. This is my personal list, obviously. So, it's gonna be biased. When we did review this game on a more professional standpoint, you try to kind of put that aside and review the game for what it is, not just the server issues. But because it's just my personal list, I'm gonna ding it for that. But man, this was an awesome game. I think I remember when we put it on the top 10 co-op games, I had this line where I said something along the lines of no game has elicited more hell yes from your boys this year.
Yes, yeah.
And it's true. I mean, that's probably the best way I can describe it. Just so many dope moments. I feel like this game somehow was made in a way that you can just craft these super amazing action set pieces just from the regular gameplay. We'll just do cool shit that's whoa, that could have been in a blockbuster movie, Yeah. And that's just the regular gameplay of this game. And I did honestly become pretty obsessed with the operations mode for a minute there. I was grinding it out a little bit just to kind of get the cool pieces.
I was too. I was playing as much as I could, but there was times where I just straight up couldn't play it.
No, exactly. I would give this game the game I'm kind of most excited to see develop. I'm super stoked to see what they add in the future. And I would love a DLC for it. We know that they have a roadmap and they're adding new missions. They did already add a new mission since the game came out, which we should still go back and play. So I'm super excited to see this one develop. But yeah, second everything you said, I'll kind of just leave you with this. I think the campaign, honestly, I started the game thinking that I would just kind of like the operations mode more and that we would just kind of get through the campaign. And the campaign really surprised me. It really surprised me as something that's it felt super old school, the kind of game I would rush home and play with my neighborhood friend or or come over to your house and play. So definitely recommend it, even if you haven't played anything Warhammer. We're just kind of dipping our toes into the world of Warhammer in the last couple of years, and never really felt that left out. So
Yeah, for sure. Great stuff.
Good stuff.
All right, we're on to number 9. And at this point, all the games going forward will be 9 out of 10 until we get to the 5 or the 10 out of 10s. But for now, both of these games we're going to list are 9 out of 10s in our book. And mine is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This game is as Gabe said, there's a certain Gabe game where it gives off Gabe energy. This game gives off big time Andrew energy. I love Metroidvanias. I love platformers. I love when they do those both really well. And the crazy part about it is Prince of Persia's combat is almost kind of like Smash Bros. In the way that it plays. It is so good. It's anime as hell. There's so many moments in this game where they just pop off. They just go all out. Crazy stuff's happening. Your character's going all out. The enemy's going all out. The scenes are amazing, but you're playing it at the same time. It is just the production value for a 2D Metroidvania is off the charts with Prince of Persia. And it's one of those games where you kind of think it ends a couple times and it doesn't, and you're like, yes, I'm okay with that. I want to keep playing. And the game somehow feels really good to play when you first start, but somehow you get these abilities that make the game feel even better 2 or 3 times throughout the experience. So it's just man, it's crazy this game's only my number 9. I kind of thought about putting it up higher than the next game on my list, but I went back and forth a million times on it. Either way, absolutely should play this. If you like Metroidvanias, I cannot suggest it enough. I am super bummed by the news that the team that made this pretty much got disbanded at Ubisoft.
Oh,
They
yeah,
had
that is crazy.
planned on making a second game. They like pitched it to the higher ups of Ubisoft, and they're like, "Nah, it didn't meet our sales targets. Sorry, you're not gonna get to do it." And it's like, oh my gosh, man. This if this was their first go at it, I can't imagine what their second would be. So yeah, awesome title that you definitely should play if you like platformers, Metroidvanias, any of that. It's a must play. So, and Gabe is playing it right now. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so this isn't on my list because I am playing it right now. I actually picked this up when it came out earlier this year, when I went on a trip with some friends, and I was like needing a fun little a Switch game, and so I picked this up and was totally blown away by it. But then another game came out shortly afterwards that I knew was gonna completely demand all of my time, so I had to shelf this for a while because I didn't pick it back up until this month.
A year later.
A whole year later.
Literally a whole year.
Yeah, literally. So, but honestly, I wasn't totally in the mood for it then. But I am very much in the mood for it now, and I've played a lot more hours of it, and it is just awesome. It's like so much fun, and the boss fights are like incredible. Like just looking at some of the boss fights here that I've already faced, I'm just like, yeah, that was sick. So good time.
Yeah, Urban said, I really don't understand how Hi-Fi Rush and Prince of Persia studios got closed. Just depressing. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush studio did get bought, so they still sort of exist, I think. I don't know what the details are on that, but they do exist somehow. And the Prince of Persia team, they still work at Ubisoft. They just got disbanded and put on other projects, which is a massive bummer. So we're not getting a sequel, and that's a crime against humanity.
It makes me sad because like when you just mentioned that, when I first saw that news story, I was like, man, that's a bummer. But now it's hitting me a lot harder because I'm playing the game and I'm realizing how dope it is. So I'm like, oh damn.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So how it is.
All right, on to your number 9.
So my number 9 was Cat Quest 3. I echo a lot of what you said. I think one thing I want to mention that you're sort of hinting at too, this idea of like, you and I tend to play a lot of RPGs, and we tend to play a lot of hardcore RPGs from software and sort of other JRPGs as well. And that was like one of the most surprising things about this game was that, one of the biggest things about an RPG, or like one of the best, ways to tell, like, is this a good RPG, is like, can I have like multiple builds? Throughout the game, is there enough for me to like switch up my build a couple times or evolve it? And this game has that, which is just crazy to me because it's so simple, but like it boils down like the essence of an RPG into just like its pure form. And we literally did have like 3 builds each throughout the whole game, and it was just awesome.
Multiple times did we switch up our builds and our strategy.
Yeah, like I think that's just so cool for like a game that, again, to me, I feel like this game, every aspect of it is really fun, and there's no fat. They completely trimmed everything that you could possibly trim of this game, where like every single thing that you encounter is serving the game, it's serving the fun, and I have a lot of respect for that, honestly. I feel like it takes a lot of restraint to build a game where you're only going to have this size of the map, and you're so focused on like what you're trying to give the player, and I think that's like one of the biggest compliments I can give this game. Like all the loot, all the side quests, the stories trying to tell, even the side content, it all feels so perfectly concise to give you just like the most calibrated experience, like in a good way. So great game.
Yeah. Next up is our number 8, and the only time where we perfectly aligned on the list. We got very close other times, but this is the first time where we have the same game at the same time. We both gave it a 9 out of 10, and that is Helldivers 2. I'm imagining as I lead up to that, like the dun 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 dun, like it's playing in the back of my head. And again, it goes back to, our top 10 is on the top 10 co-op games. It's not necessarily our personal top 10. That's just kind of how it goes. And that's going to come up again in a minute here. But yeah, Helldivers 2, I think we both loved. It was the same thing as Warhammer, where the launch was really frustrating. We lost many a play session to server issues, bug issues, especially our friends who were playing on PC. Like they could barely play at all. It took away from what like otherwise would have been probably one of the coolest moments in our like co-op gaming history of like everybody was playing this all at once and having a great time, except we couldn't play half the time. So that was a huge thing that kind of held it back. Again, like Warhammer, I think if none of that existed, this probably would have been our co-op game of the year, but it did, and that took away from our co-op enjoyment of the game. But either way, it's still, despite that, and despite other hiccups it's made throughout the year, has been a game that I've come back to time and time again because it's just like so, at its core, it's just so simply fun. It doesn't even matter if you're playing with friends or with randoms. If you're playing on easy or on hard, it is always going to be a good time just because that moment-to-moment gameplay is just electric. The entire time you're out there doing your thing, hell diving, it is a good time, and it continues to evolve. So yeah, I felt very good about giving it a 9 out of 10 at a time, even despite its issues, and I still feel good about that. I've actually come back and played it, I think like 3, 4, maybe 5 times since we ended our review time of it.
Yeah.
Because I just like to sit around and play it. I could just sit on my own and play it whenever I want. And I love the monetization of it too. I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time. Love the monetization. I wish every freaking game did their season pass version where you can just do it at your own pace and you have plenty of options and everything, but that's besides the point. I'll let you go now.
No, yeah, I totally echo a lot of what you said, and I want to piggyback on one point that you said, which is that we came back to it multiple times. You definitely came back to it a little bit more than I did, but even then, I am typically just not a person that goes back to games. Like I kind of am more of like a one and done sort of person.
We're both that way.
Yeah, we're both that way, and I think we both kind of favor variety. And so when you find a game that you go back to time and time again, I think that's like it really speaks volumes for both of us. But yeah, I mean, despite the server issues, we did still manage to get all our friends in on this game, which is awesome. And I think that was actually like a super special time this year, just having all our friends that were playing this at the same time. I mean, there were points like where we had too many friends playing this, and we had to kind of like figure out like, okay, well, we can only have this size of a fire team.
Yeah. And we'd have like 6 guys who wanted to play, but our fire team was 4 people, and we're like, okay, well, let's take turns then. Yeah. But the servers were not letting us take turns.
Exactly. That's cool, you know, and yeah, it's cool to see how the game has evolved. I think it's doing something super unique with the way it's doing this sort of like meta narrative. And I feel like they're still developing that. Like I feel like we're gonna look back and be like, wow, like we're really onto something with this sort of way of sending you out on like the big missions overall that the whole fan base kind of contributes to. But yeah, just like despite any of that, at its core, the game was just like so much fun. It goes to show like if you just have like great gameplay, like that's just enough, you know. And I feel like that is why it kind of gathered so much of a fan base. And then they also obviously went above and beyond with this sort of cool meta narrative, and I think, you know, even if they had a couple stumbles here and there, I think the monetization in general was looked on pretty favorably. And I agree with you. I do think I wish other games did it the same way. And we'll be playing Helldivers next year, and I can't say that for all the for many games on this list.
I couldn't
which is
more.
very cool.
Yeah.
So
it's a chance we play it next week, actually.
Honestly,
we'll talk about that later though. All right, number 7. So we were past the halfway mark. I was gonna try and put 15 through 8 in the chat, but the text ended up being all funny, so I didn't do it. But number 7, still in the 9 out of 10 range. I have the final game that's a co-op game on my list is Raven's Watch. This is the same thing as Helldivers 2, where most of the time when Gabe and I review a game, we finish the game and we probably don't come back to it just because we like to play different things. We run a channel where we have to play as much as we can. We can't just stick on one game for forever. And Raven's Watch was the game that was like, but you are going to stick with me. Because we probably finished our review time. I would say we were around the 20, I think my game clock was around 25 hours at the time we put out a review. At this point, my game clock is somewhere between 45 and 50 hours.
Yeah.
I just can't stop playing it. And it's another game where like, we're probably going to play it more next year. I'm probably going to try and convince you to play it again next week before other games come out. Like, it's just that kind of game where the challenge drives you insane, but insane in the way of like, I need to figure this out. I need to get better. I know I can do this. It like has that kind of challenge to it that admittedly some people are not going to like. And that's why it wasn't higher on our top 10. We were like, we like this a lot, but there's going to be a lot of people who do not like the difficulty of Raven's Watch. Yes, Chrono Christian says, the game slaps and slaps back. Could not be more
That's
true.
a great way to put it.
So yeah, it was easily one of my favorite games of the year. It's very rare for like one of the co-op games to get into our top 5. I was super tempted to put Raven's Watch in there. It did not quite get it, but yeah, one of my favorite roguelites that I'll play for a long time, for sure.
Yeah, no, this is great. We'll follow up on my thoughts of that in a minute.
Yes, that's right. And so Gabe's number 7 is, I can't pronounce it, so you've definitely got to say this one.
Oh, I think I forgot to find the Neva trailer. I'm going to find one real quick.
Okay, well, I'll tell them. It's Neva.
It's Neva.
Neva? We don't know. I'm not
look it
totally
up
sure.
real quick. I knew I missed one. I was like...
The other... Sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say? I found the trailer here.
I was going to say the other thing I forgot to mention about Raven's Watch that I loved is the characters of it all were like all so perfectly well designed. Like, you could play any character in this game and you could make them viable through like sheer force of will. But honestly, you didn't. That's the wrong way to put it, really, because they were so well balanced that like anybody was viable, and I think that was really impressive for a difficult game like that. But okay, now you can talk about Neva.
No, you're good. Cool. So Neva. So this is the second game from this I think Brazilian studio called Nomada, and they put out this game called Greece that came out I don't know, probably like 4 years ago. Again, another sort of cool little artsy game. I liked Greece, but to be honest, I didn't love it. I felt like it was one of those games where like the art style was amazing, but it didn't really have the gameplay to match. And that's the best thing I can say about Neva. It is easily one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. At any moment, you could stop the game, take a screenshot, and it would make a kick-ass wallpaper. Legitimately, at any fucking moment. But the gameplay is so good. The combat is insane. Like how it's so simple, but they give you just enough tools to make it like you have enough like skill expression there. I did not expect to say this about Neva at all, but genuinely, I think Neva has one of my favorite boss fights of the whole, like, of any game this year. Just a really, really cool boss fight, really cool narrative. Music was awesome. I played this a bit sporadically, to be honest. Like, it's a Switch game. I kind of played it when I traveled a little bit here and there. But yeah, like I really recommend this game, actually. I would say I kind of recommend this to anybody if you're kind of at all interested in a sort of cool narrative artsy game. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by how good the combat is too. I mean, to give you just a little bit of premise, you obviously play as this girl who has this little cub, and then the game is told in 4 seasons. I think you start with summer and then with winter or something. But over time, the cub sort of grows into this wolf, and it's so cool because every other season, like the cub sort of has newer abilities, and then it starts to help you in combat, which is like so freaking sick, actually. Yeah, I genuinely love this game. This is the one that like the game this year that I think I will evangelize the most. Like I think everyone should play this.
Nice. Yeah, it's probably number 1 on my backlog for 2024. And Urban said, I just played Greece and I'm so excited to play Neva now. So,
yeah, you'll definitely love it.
All right, we're on to number 6. We are right outside the top 5. We're still both giving 9 out of 10s to these next 2 games. And my number 6 was The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. If you know me, I'm a Nintendo guy through and through, and I'm especially a Zelda guy through and through. But I don't want to say that as like some sort of asterisk. Well, it was Zelda, so of course I was going to like it. No, like this was a legitimately fantastic Zelda game where you actually played as Zelda and had a totally different bag of tricks to use to go through the adventure. I love that whole premise where instead of combat, you were more so like a summoner class in an RPG. And a lot of it was just like, what kind of enemies should you summon for this scenario to complete a combat challenge? But then a lot of it is just it's really just a big puzzle game. And a lot of the puzzles are really ingenious. The way that they slowly build up your arsenal of what you can use to solve puzzles. It definitely does the whole like Tears of the Kingdom, especially Tears of the Kingdom, but Breath of the Wild thing too, where you could solve things in a million ways. Like the way I solve the puzzle is not going to be the way the next guy solves it, or the next guy, or the next guy. It just like has that amazing puzzle box aspect to it that only Zelda seems to pull off. And then on top of that, like soundtrack was great, art direction. I love the toy aesthetic that they've been doing lately for these top-down Zeldas. The side quests were like weirdly so good and weirdly really rewarding too. It's like the perfectly sized Zelda Hyrule, that like compared to what I played recently and like the gigantic Tears of the Kingdom. I love the size of this Hyrule. Yeah, I can't praise it enough. I really thought it was what everything I wanted to be and more. And I was a little bit worried going into it, and there was no need to be. If you like Zelda games, you really should play this at some point or another. It's definitely a special one, and was very close to my top 5. Just missed it, but a great game, and one that I will be lending to Gabe as soon as I see him next.
Yeah,
no
I was
doubt.
gonna say we will be seeing each other soon, and I do want this. I want to play this next year for sure. This is definitely very high on my backlog, so that's great. Love that.
All right, Gabe's number 6.
Yeah, so in my number 6 is Raven's Watch. Again, I echo a lot of what Andrew said. This is super surprising for me because, again, I don't go back to games often, and I was like, let me put it this way. So we played this, we played the early access was just you and I. And then we played the 1.0 with our friend Christian, who's in the chat here. And I became so utterly obsessed with like fully beating the game and like beating the other difficulties that then I was like, we need to recruit our friend Jake because we need the full squad to get this done. And that was just like, I was just obsessed. Like I was obsessed with trying to beat this freaking game. I still am. And then we both got really...
Haven't beaten it.
Nope. And we both got really into watching guides and looking at like, sort of the min-maxing of builds and strategies. And then that even gave us like another second win, so to speak, to the game of like, oh my God, we've been doing things wrong. Like, here's like this new strategy that we need to employ. I was looking at like the best ways to play my characters that I was into. Still am doing that. It's just, yeah, it's a really great game. I think this could honestly make my top 50 list of games of all time, just of like how much I enjoyed and how much it's sort of like pulled me back again and again and again, and will surely do so.
It took over our mind share for like a 2-month period, and still is. Like, it still is to this day.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's rare for me to become like just completely obsessive over a game like this. And when it does, it's like, yeah, like I feel like that's a special game. Is this very similar to Pass of Exile? No, not really.
Only in the fact that it's top down and that's how the combat feels.
Yeah,
but for the most part,
this is probably a little
the
bit
game
more...
setup and everything. No.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to feel a little bit more hack and slashy, a little faster.
Yeah, it's a roguelite with Hades-like action. It's the best way to describe it.
Yes, exactly. So,
but it just doesn't do it justice.
It does not do it justice.
Moving on to our top 5. So at this point, all of Gabe's future games that he'll mention, he gave a 10 out of 10 to, and my top 3, I gave a 10 out of 10 to. So this next game, I still gave a 9 out of 10. My number 5 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Man, what a game. Where to even start with this one? The best way to describe Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is when it's like a really nice buffet. Because there's buffets you go to and they're not good buffets. Like a Golden Corral. I mean, I've never been to Golden Corral, so like I'm just gonna dunk on Golden Corral here. It's probably not the nicest buffet. I've been to buffets where it's like $100 a person. Those are pretty nice buffets, But when you go into a really nice buffet,
here, wait, restart your metaphor. I think we had a a drop frame there in a sec. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're good.
All right, restart your what you were saying about buffets.
I was just saying, essentially, there's bad buffets and there's good buffets. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a good buffet. Why is that? Well, even in a good buffet, you're going to have some great steak. Is it the best steak you've ever had? No, but it's going to be great. And you're going to have some great lobster tails. The best lobster tail? No, but it was great. Cheesecake, so good. Not the best cheesecake you'll have. And so on and so on and so on. That's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There is just so much game here with such like a high level of quality that you just do not see. Like, I don't know how they could afford to make this game. So many other games will like, there'll be a 70 to 100 hour game like this is, but like maybe they can't have everything, every bell and whistle, like all the voice acting or all the animated cutscenes or all like this incredible like flashy art style and just like insane fidelity. But Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has all of that, and it's also a game that you could find a million flaws in it. It is by no means perfect. It is a game you could easily poke holes into, but it's just the fact that there's so much of it, and for the most part it is so good that you can't help but leave it after like 80 hours like I did and be like, well, that has to be in my top 5, right? It'd be crazy if it wasn't. That's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's a hard game to just disseminate into 1 minute like I just did, but that's the best I can do. The other two things I'll say is one of the most incredible soundtracks you'll ever see in a video game. Everything is orchestral and beautiful, and they have songs for like, there's this one side quest where you deliver a dog from one town to the other, and they made a song specifically for that one side quest that absolutely pops off and has like vocals and everything. It's crazy. That's another just a perfect example of this game. And then the combat too is just it. In Remake, I played Remake and I didn't love the combat. I was just kind of getting used to it. But then by the time I finished Rebirth, I was like, this is one of the most ingenious combat systems I'll ever play in a game. It is just that good. It's so deep. It's so flashy. It's so fun. It never gets old. So yeah, that's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. 9 out of 10. I don't know if I can suggest this to anybody. I don't know if I could be like, yeah, you got to go play 80 hours of this insane buffet of video game. But at the same time, I'm glad I did. So
that's great.
Take that how you will.
I really honestly like, you know, I knew I wasn't going to play this year. And I've been sort of had this kind of goal of just playing them all back to back because I know there's going to be a third one, you know. And honestly, I still want to do that. I still want to play Remake and then this, you know. And I mean, I would be playing less games that year because these are all so big, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one definitely looked a lot more appealing to me than Remake, especially because of the sort of semi-open world aspect of it. So yeah, that's cool.
I also essentially 100% of this game in the same way that I did with Astrobot, where I didn't get the platinum, but I did all like everything is 11 out of 11 things are done. Like I did all of that, every single side quest and all that. I did all of it, which is why it took me 80 hours. But
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah,
he's a madman.
He's a madman. All right, so Gabe's number 5 and his first 10 out of 10 for the year is
Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree.
There it is. The big DLC.
The big DLC. I mean, how could this not be a 10 out of 10 for me? You know, it's so weird to talk about this thing because it's like you could just say it is more Elden Ring, but like, I mean, Elden Ring's an amazing game, so like, who cares? But it isn't just more Elden Ring, honestly. Like, I do think that they did some really interesting things with this DLC, and I won't talk about all of it because you'll follow up on it too. But I will say my two things that really stuck out to me was one, the way they handled story and NPCs in this game. I think is really cool, and a step up from Elden Ring and even the Souls franchise. I just felt like I had so much more of a connection to the NPCs, so much more of like uncovering this like web of deception and relationships and how all these sort of deals, these NPCs felt about each other, and they felt about this deity that they worshipped or didn't worship. And so I thought that was super interesting. it was a lot more of like a straightforward story for a Souls game, and I thought that was like kind of cool to see how they could do that, but like in this format. And then I thought the exploration was super interesting. Like I felt like they made this map that was like deliberately meant to like confuse you a lot. There's a lot. It's very layered. And there's all these different ways that you could get lost in it. But I felt like they did that deliberately to kind of put you out of your comfort zone for what you expected of the lands between. So yeah, just awesome time. Was so happy to dive back into this. It was hard as hell, but super satisfying at the same time.
Yes. Alrighty, we're on to our number 4. This is my last 9 out of 10 game, and I gave my number 4 spot to Astrobot, which is kind of crazy because this is an Andrew game in the same way that Prince of Persia was, a 3D platformer that's super cute, very like constantly changing gameplay mechanics. That's like my kind of stuff, but it just missed the 5 out of 5. I feel like the only thing I could say about it is it didn't have the difficulty that I necessarily was looking for, in the sense that it's such a simple game, and that's the beauty of it. And I think it's a pro for 99% of people, where it's you play the game with 2 buttons. But I think it loses that finesse of a Mario game, where like Mario is like, his jumps are like an art form, where he has like the triple jump and the crouch jump and the backwards jump and blah blah blah. All that to say, that's my only thing I could possibly take away from Astrobot, because otherwise it is like an absolute masterpiece in 3D platforming, in creating a mascot for an entire brand, in celebrating PlayStation, and utilizing a console's weird gimmicks that you don't even think about or don't even remember exist. It somehow reminds you like, oh yeah, this controller is actually super cool and can do a lot of things. And from the beginning to the end, you're never not going to be smiling while playing Astrobot, which is the ultimate, I think, compliment of it. Like, video games are meant to be fun, and Astrobot is incredibly fun, you know?
Yeah.
I like this quote from the developers where they said they wanted to make Astrobot like almost feel like a physical toy that you could hold. Which is like a really odd idea for a video game, like a software, but that's exactly what Astrobot feels like.
Yeah.
And there's like no way to know that until you play, and you're like, yeah, I somehow understand that. And if you have a PlayStation and you didn't play Astrobot this year, then it's like, I don't know, go sell your PlayStation. You're wasting your time. You don't need a PlayStation then. You don't deserve your PS5. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It was that good. So
yeah,
I'm very glad it won Game of the Year, and I'm sure in a second here, Gabe will say the same.
Yes.
So I'll leave it at that and let Gabe tell us about his next 10 out of 10, his number 4 game.
Yeah, going back a couple games, because you talked about this one earlier. But yeah, my number 4 is Animal Well. If you haven't picked up on it, I played a lot of puzzle games this year. Some that aren't even on this list, because really like my puzzle journey this year started with Cocoon, which was a backlog game from last year that I never got around to. I played that, and then I played Lorelei, and then I played Animal Well. And they were all just like phenomenal puzzle games. But I mean, I was completely and utterly obsessed with this game. Like, just playing it wee hours of the night. I did, I didn't 100% it, but I did collect all the eggs. It was very minimal help, which I felt very proud about. If you know,
let me give you a little props here, because I talked about this earlier with the onion. There's the level 1 puzzles. That's just like beating the base game. Both Gabe and I pulled that off. There's the level 2, which is collecting all the eggs. I was not able to do that on my own. I got like 60% of the way there and had to get help with. Gabe did all of that on his own. There's the level 3 puzzles. I could do one of them. Gabe did like 4 of them. And these, we're talking about like get your journal out level kind of stuff. Gabe did several of them. And of course, neither of us even got close to the level 4.
Sure.
But just want to give you your props. You were so much better at this game than I was.
I appreciate
so keep
that.
going.
I mean, being good at a game definitely helps. But I mean, I was just so impressed by this game. The fact that like we hear a lot about like someone making a game, like a single person developer. But this guy didn't just make the game. He made the engine for the game. He made the soundtrack for the game. He voiced he voiced all the animals in the game. It's just like crazy. Like that's crazy. Like who even does that? I felt like it was so special. There's so much more respect and awards this year. Definitely like my favorite Metroidvania I've ever played. It's like there's so many of these little moments where it's like you find like an item and it's like, oh my god, like you instantly know like, okay, I know where to use that, or then you don't and you're like, where do I use this? And you're just kind of walking around just like shooting a frisbee everywhere, and then it connects with something. And then you're like, holy shit, I feel like a genius. I think that's the best part of this game. There's so many moments where you just feel so smart, at the same time sometimes so stupid, but when it makes me feel so smart, it's just like, oh man, it's just awesome. I really bugged my girlfriend with this game, I think, because there's so many nights where like I would just be like, I would just I play this in bed and I turn over, I'm like, babe, you're not gonna believe this, the remote control does this. Just so stupid. But yeah, I love this game. Like there's a part of me that for a while I was like, I feel like this deserves to be my number one. Like I just absolutely love this game. And it was super fun that a bunch of people played this. Obviously you played this, so we kept talking about it. Our friend Christian literally called me one time for me to give him like a non-spoilery hint, so that was fun as well. And yeah, a bunch of people on our Discord are playing this, so shout out to them as well. Kind of talking about it was really fun. But yeah, very much on number 4.
All right, we're into the top 3 from here on out. Nothing but 10 out of 10s in our book. My number 3 was Persona 3 Reload, which was, man, what a special experience this was. Gabe is a huge Persona fan. He played Persona 3 back like when it first released, when he was just a kid, and so this was kind of a magical experience for him to get the remake all these years later. And he pretty much sat me down and was like, look, we're best friends. We're partners in this whole co-op bros business thing. You got to play this if this is going to continue. You have to play Persona 3 Reload. And I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to this game. And it's a long game. I mean, it probably took us both 70 to 80 hours. But I did. And I absolutely fell in love with what Persona is, what Atlas is, the world, the characters, the gameplay, the music. Can we just... I wish we could just sit and listen to the music together for like the rest of the night. I would do that. I'd be okay with it. It ruined Gabe's Spotify rap, but more on that I'm sure in a minute here. It truly is like Persona is beloved for a reason, and I now understand that because I played Persona 3 Reload. It's an 80-hour game that has turn-based combat that I played through just fine. I was never bored. I never thought it was taking too long. The pacing always feels great, and that's something that I feel like in the modern day only Atlas has figured out, and they're still doing it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But could not be more happy that my boy forced me to play Persona 3 Reload, and now we were playing it around the same time, had like a shared experience. It was like we have like 4 or 5 really, really cool moments, I think, every year in the games that we play, either actually together in co-op or like just playing at the same time. And Persona 3 Reload is like going to go down as one of those, you know? So
totally.
Could not suggest some more. If you've ever been like, should I play a Persona game? Play Persona 3 Reload. I was in your shoes, and I'm glad that I finally did it. So
good time.
All righty. Gabe's number 3. I actually thought at one point this was your number 1, but I guess not. But your number 3 is
Astrobot. Yeah, Astrobot. It's hard, like these Netsu games. I kind of consider the wall,
yes.
And they just were not gonna get. No one was gonna get past the wall. Not Astrobot, not Animal Wild, not Elden Ring. We'll get to that in a minute. But I love Astrobot. I'll say this. One of the main reasons I went to the Game Awards this year was because there's 2 games that were kind of mostly the ones that were going to win, the ones that people thought were the big contenders. I was somewhat rooting more for the other game that didn't win. But at the end of the day, I genuinely was so happy that Astrobot did win. even if it wasn't the horse that I chose, like it was like I was so happy that it won because it is so deserving. This is also like a really special game for me because I played this. You know, my girlfriend isn't like a huge gamer. She has a Switch. She plays some of her own games, huge on Animal Crossing. But she enjoys watching games. She's watched Uncharted. She's watched me play Last of Us Part 2. But this is the first game in a while where she sat down. I was like, hey, you should watch this game because I think you'll enjoy it. It looks really fun. And then she was like, actually, I want to play this game. And I wasn't allowed to not only not play it without her, but then also there were levels that she was like, I'm going to play the snowman level. So I mean, honestly,
that's my level.
There were levels that I still didn't play of this game because my girlfriend beat them for me, which is hilarious.
Hopefully, sure that you played the casino level. That one was dope.
Which one? Casino level?
The casino level.
Yes.
That was a good one.
But yeah, she really enjoyed this game, and it honestly was really special for me to see her like have like a big gamer moment of like, wow, like this game is so cool, like I would literally just like be in awe of looking at her play the game and be so excited and see that joy. And I can only imagine what that's like, if you're like a parent and you're getting that experience with like your child. Like that must be like so cool. And I think this is the only game that can give you that experience this year, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think just for that, it's super special. But I was talking about it with Jake and Christian over the time I spent in Florida, because Christian just played this. He also gave it a 10 out of 10. We were kind of trying to sell it to Jake, and kind of what we were trying to sort of impart on him is that like if you take away all of like the Sony stuff in this game, this is still a 10 out of 10, and I firmly believe that. I really do. Like you take away all that stuff, this game is still like so much fun. I'm not a huge platformer person. I did struggle with some of the harder levels, but so for a less seasoned platformer, I will say you might get a little bit more mileage out of it. If you are super big into platformers, I do agree with what you said. It doesn't have as much skill expression as something like Mario, like a 3D Mario, but yeah, just phenomenal game. And I do hope this is sort of like a watershed moment for Sony, and that we do kind of get more. I mean, I'm obviously a huge fan of Uncharted and the Naughty Dogs and Last of Us, but I want to see like more like just kind of family-friendly titles too, like another Ratchet and Clank, another Astro Bot, a return of like Jack and Daxter or some of those older franchises. So I hope this is kind of like the start of that. Like I think that'd be really dope. So
yeah, one more thing I forgot to say earlier. I think what's so special about Astrobot is it's a video game that just makes you want to play more video games because it reminds you like, oh yeah, this is what video games are. And then you realize, oh wait, but I'm playing like one of the best games ever made.
Yep.
You have that moment where you're like, okay, well not all video games are gonna feel like this, but that's how special it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to our number 2, still in the 10 out of 10 range. We're not leaving it. And my number 2 actually was Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. For the longest time, this was going to be my game of the year. I just couldn't help it. It had to be. For all the reasons that Gabe said, I thought that it elevated the NPCs and the narrative and the interactions that you had and the connections that were being made and all of that. I felt like it actually elevated that from the base game. Same thing with exploration. It did something that I feel like From Software has emulated, but not quite pulled off since first Dark Souls. And that this was truly like a layer cake kind of world where there was multiple layers, quite literally from like a top-down thing. But they all connected really well, and sometimes you'd be in one area and you'd be like, oh, I see how that area would lead to this area and how it's connected to that. Like that has been emulated in the past with other From Software games and has been done well, but nothing's ever done it in the same way Dark Souls has. And I think this was like the best effort they've ever made to doing that. And in such a large space too. Dark Souls is probably like a tenth of this map. They're doing that same thing on such a large scale. Yeah, just truly insane, absolutely beautiful art direction, off the chain, amazing boss battles. yeah, I love this so much. Elden Ring is one of my favorite games of all time, and this was just like, oh yeah, more of my favorite game of all time. And that's keeping in mind, like, Breath of the Wild came out with DLC. It wasn't as good as Breath of the Wild. Like, it doesn't always happen, right? So the fact that they were able to do that is, I think, incredible, and why I was okay with it being nominated for Game of the Year. I understood why other people didn't like that, but I didn't really care. I thought it deserved it. I think my final point on it was, I know they're not gonna, and I understand why, but like, if From Software, just for the next 10 years, every 2 years put out a DLC of this size and this magnitude, I'd be okay with it. I would do it over and over and over again, and I bet it would be in my top 5 every single time, because it's just that good. And so yeah, I think Shadow of the Erdtree is definitely special, and will probably go down as my favorite DLC I've ever played, and that's considering I played almost all the From Software DLC, and it is always fantastic. So yeah, definitely a special experience, to say the least. Plus, we had, we were all playing at the same time, and all that adds to it. That makes it extra fun, and so many like goosebump moments, and just super special.
I want to mention one more thing, because you reminded me of it, which is interesting to think about, which is that it is kind of funny, because Dark Souls was the first DLC I think either of us had ever played, actually. The Artorias of the Abyss one, and that was like I think before, at the time, like, I think we were both sort of like, DLC doesn't, I mean, at least for that era, didn't always feel worth it. And then we played that, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So it's kind of funny to sort of have that sort of full circle moment of like, that was really the first DLC we ever played, and then this is like started to really redefine what a DLC can even be. So yeah, kind of funny to think about that.
It kind of ruined DLC for me going forward, playing Artorias of the Abyss as our first one, because I was like, whoa, DLC is so cool, but like realizing now that like they don't all get that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, enough about Elden Ring. We'll talk about it again this summer when we play Night Rain.
That's right.
For now, let's get to our number 2 from Gabe. You guys are probably going to guess what it is. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so this is what I called the wall, which is Persona 3 Reload is the first layer of the wall.
That's right.
Yeah, so like Andrew said, I played this on my PS2 15 years ago. I looked it up today, actually, because I was actually listening to the soundtrack today, again, like I always do most of the time.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, this was super special, like you said, because I played this 15 years ago on my PS2. I think I don't even know how I found it, probably just like some article. It looked really cool. I was really into sort of like playing JRPGs back then. And I was just like completely obsessed with this. Like, I was thinking about it today. This game just has a vibe that is so unique and so like, I don't know, like no other game has really found this vibe. And yeah, it is kind of wild, because since this has come out, and another game that we'll talk about in a minute, I feel like a lot of people for a while, like Persona 4 was sort of like the darling that everyone was like, Persona 4 is the best Persona, And I mean, people obviously like Persona 5 as well, but people were almost like, Persona 4 is the best. And then I feel like when Reload came out, everyone was like, no, actually, Persona 3 has always been the best. And I've always thought that. Persona 3 has always been the best. I love Persona 5, but Persona 3 has always been the best in my opinion, just from so many different aspects. But this is talking to people who've played Persona. So if you haven't played Persona, I will just say that this game, like you said, is impeccably paced for how long it is. Has probably my favorite story of any game ever. A insanely kick-ass soundtrack, and the thing that I appreciated the most playing it this time around was I got so much more into the combat and the strategy of it and the min-maxing of it, that I was like, wow, like there really is like so much room to like build up your party and dive into specific stats and the different sets of personas that you have. And then obviously like the big cherry on top when this experience was playing it with you at the same time. Some of the story beats that I remembered, and then some of them that I didn't, but being able to talk back and forth and be like, oh my god, did you meet this character? And that was just awesome. Like truly probably one of my like top 10 favorite experiences in gaming ever. Just the fact that you picked this up and you loved it just as much as I did, and we were able to share in that experience was like truly special. So yeah.
Yeah, the way the story ended, I immediately had to call you. I think at like 12 o'clock at night, or I probably texted you and then called you first thing the next day. But or I'm probably 3 o'clock in the morning because that's a long final chapter. That's how these games go.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, that gets us to our number one. For the second time on this list, we are aligned on this. Our number one game of the year, 10 out of 10 for both of us, is Metaphor Refantasio. Metaphor Refantasio. We both have played through. Gabe has beaten this game, and I actually have not beaten this game. This game is my game of the year, and I have not beaten it yet. Like Persona 3 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's a JRPG. It's really freaking long. So I am 65 hours. I am on the last bit of the game. I probably still have like 15 more hours to go. I'll probably beat it in 80. But Gabe has beat it. But I've known since like hour 5 that this is going to be my game of the year because it's just that freaking good. Soundtrack just absolutely off the chain. My boy Mr. Chanter just giving out the Hoyas left and right as I'm crushing these demons in battle. One of the craziest stories where you never really know what's gonna happen. Like, so many JRPGs are super predictable, and this is in some ways, but like for the most part, the plot is just like so outlandish that you're just like, I genuinely have no idea what's gonna happen next, and that feels so good to play like an 80-hour game where you just genuinely don't know where it's going. You do not, and you are just waiting for the next story beat to happen. Combat, best turn-based combat I've ever played in a game. Not even close. It takes the Persona combat and like dials it to 11. Man, it's just, there's nothing about this game that I dislike. I think it is so finely tuned. I would suggest it to anybody, and I was same with Gabe. I thought Astrobot and Metaphor were the most deserving. I felt like it was a two-man race. I was disappointed Metaphor didn't win because I do think it's that good. But I'm gonna leave the rest for Gabe because he actually has beaten this and I have not. So he should get the final say at all of this.
Well, you're right there again. You're right there. You're like an hour or two away. So you've beaten it in all but 2 hours. I do want to call out that I am playing the Accolades trailer of this, just so you know that we're not alone in this. So many people love this game. Because some people might be hearing it's like, what the hell is this game? Like, I've never heard of this game before. But
no, I think if they're watching this stream, they know that this was a highly rated game this year.
But yeah, man, this is it was kind of crazy because Persona 3 Reload came out in February, and that was for a while my number one game. And then I obviously knew that Metaphor was on the line, and that was kind of the big question in my mind, was like, was this going to be better than Persona 3 Reload? And even through to the end, I wasn't totally sure, and then the ending just totally sealed the deal for me and was like, yes, this game is awesome for all the reasons that you said. Again, the combat is amazing. They sort of built on the Persona combat, but like made it even better. Like, it'll be kind of hard to play a Persona game after this because like the combat in this is just so cool and so deep. The story is just incredible. Like you said, perfectly paced, and I was always wanting to like so surprised as to what was happening. I think what's really interesting about this game and the way it paces the story and all the sort of big set pieces is that like it kind of feels like different arcs of an anime, and there's so many different sections where I was like, oh man, the Martyra section was so good actually, and that was only like the second arc in the game, you know,
second arc, 100%.
Which is like kind of crazy to think about. I'm just gonna keep replaying
probably the third arc, really.
I'm replaying this trailer over and over, but yeah, I mean, I just think the characters are amazing, which is a high bar from Persona 3 Reload, like probably my favorite cast of any sort of RPG. And I generally think this is now my favorite cast of any RPG. Like, each character is super, like, well fleshed out, and you have such a deep relationship with all of them. And then I think the thing I'll say at the end of this is that, like, I just felt like this game, there's so many layers to kind of playing a video game, right? It's like the first layer is like, well, this game is just fun. It's just providing me like enjoyment. you know. And then there's sort of this other layer of like, oh, like maybe it feels artistic, right? Like maybe like not only is the game fun, but like I'm appreciating the sort of visuals and art style, and it's making me think about the game in this sort of like aesthetic way type of thing, right? And then I feel like there's a third layer which few games get to, which is that like the game has made me think beyond the game. It's made me think about like my life and the way like my place in the world. It's kind of like imparted something onto you that you're gonna think about after you're done. And few games do that. I mean, honestly, few movies, few shows will do that, but the best of that kind of media in general, I think will do that. And this is one of those. Like I generally walked away thinking so much about like my place in the world, like my beliefs, my ideals, which is, you know, sounds dramatic, but like truly if you play, you'll kind of come away, I think, feeling the same way. Like I feel like it'd be very hard for you to walk away from this game and not have like some deep thoughts about like what you think, what you believe, other people, what's the role of stories in the world, in your life, the power of like, I don't know, relationships and appreciating people who've been with you. I don't know, so many different aspects of it. Yeah. And you know, those are kind of conversations that we were having too, of like, wow, like that's so deep type of thing, you know.
Yeah, this game takes on this game takes on race, religion, social class, politics, and like you usually would be like, oh well, it's probably super cheesy and all those things as a JRPG. No, they do it like so deftly and so perfectly that like there's actual commentary going on that's like, yeah, no, this is hitting all those sorts of beats. It's a very, very impressive experience for sure.
Yes. So
all right, well there it was, dude.
Game of the year.
Yep. We were aligned. We weren't aligned last year. We were aligned this year. So there's our top 15. Metaphor Refantasio takes our number one game of the year. But we do want to do a quick honorable mentions before we get into our secret block, maybe our favorite block. I think it's my favorite block, but our secret block at the end. So our honorable mentions, just a couple games that didn't quite make the top 15, but we want to give a quick shout out to. I'll do mine quickly. Gabe will knock out his. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is a little JRPG I played at the beginning of the year. It was kind of weird how I got into it. I just really wanted to solve how the co-op worked in this game. As a co-op bro, I found it important that I needed to solve how this worked because it didn't seem to make sense in my head. So I went ahead and played it and found out that it was actually a great game that just the co-op didn't work how I wanted it to, but the actual campaign was great in its own right. So yeah, if you're looking for a short JRPG, those are incredibly rare with real-time action. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is a really fun little like 15-20 hour experience that you could actually end up playing a lot more of. But watch our co-op how-to and my co-op impressions before you do that. The other game I want to give a quick shout out to is also Destiny: The Final Shape. Same reason as Gabe. Like, one of the coolest missions you'll play in a video game. Even if you didn't play all of Destiny, if you were just there for parts of it, you get all of that in this. Was really bummed at how frustrating it was to get back into Destiny. And that wasn't really even the Final Shape's fault. It's just Destiny's fault. So that was what kind of held it back for me. But yeah, truly one of the coolest missions. And they somehow landed the plane both mechanically from like a gameplay perspective and a narrative perspective. I don't know what Destiny's ever going to be going forward, but for their final DLC and their first 10-year arc, an impressive finish, to say the least. So those are my two honorable mentions. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll look up this trailer for this game real quick, just because I think he'll do it a little bit more justice as I'm speaking to it. I did the same thing for Grand Blue. But my first honorable mention is this game called Haunty, which I played on Game Pass. I thought the art style was super interesting. Instantly caught my eye. The reason it's not on my list is, one, I had this one big bug that like literally stopped me from playing the game for like 2 weeks. So that was super frustrating. And then in general, there was just some like kind of game jank into it that like was very sort of indicative of like a studio's first game. But to their credit, like for a studio's first game, I thought this was super impressive. It's this little game where you play as this ghost who's trying to ascend to like heaven, and then like fails to do so, and so you're kind of stuck in this sort of like underworld. But the mechanics of the game are super interesting. The combat is like a twin stick shooter, but then the other thing you can do is that you can like possess things, and essentially the possess mechanic is very similar to that of Mario Odyssey, where like you like become that thing. So I thought that was really cool for a game to kind of like, you know, in a sense steal that mechanic but kind of make it their own, because in this you can also possess not just like enemies, but you can possess all these other objects as well, which I thought was interesting. It also had a really cool little story, and it had this really nice jazz soundtrack, which I thought was really good. I totally recommend it if you are into I don't know if this looks interesting to you, if you like the art style. It probably is a little bit, it's probably, you know, the issues are probably fixed by now. I played this several months ago, and it is on Game Pass, so that was kind of like a nice boost to it. But yeah, definitely one that I was happy I played. Just wish maybe I would have played it when it was a little bit more patched out, I guess. So, and then my other honorable mention, which I'll look up a trailer for real quick as well, is the Outlast Trials. So I'm a huge horror fan, if you might already know. And one of my favorite horror games is the Outlast franchise. A Persona 3 Reload ad is playing right now, which I'm not mad about. So I was like super stoked out of my mind when they announced the Outlast Trials as a co-op Outlast game. And I feel like this game deserves so much credit. We've said this multiple times in the past for like transforming and the Outlast I guess like vibe and format, but making it into a co-op game, but making it like its own. Like it's super unique for what it is.
I never played a game like it.
Yeah, it was just like super fun. And it feels fear and, you know, a lot of other things. But there's so many hype moments around like barely escaping like, you know, the big bad, and having someone pull up a gate so that the other person can sneak by, and you're like, come on. Just a ton of fun. Probably has my favorite highlights of any game that we played this year, just because they were so outlandish. So yeah, and I'm actually like really excited to see where they go with this. Like if they come out with like a very sizable DLC, I would totally go back to it. So yeah, would highly recommend if you're into horror games. If you're looking for something that is a co-op horror game, this is one of the best.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was going to be on my honorable mentions, but Gabe already took it, so I didn't want to repeat everything he was saying. But yeah, such a unique experience. All right, that brings us to our final part of the stream. If you've been here the whole time, seriously, thank you. This has been so much fun. Like I said, this is one of my favorite streams of the year, and this is one of my reasons why, because we have added on what we call the secret superlatives block. So what we do is both Gabe and I come up with 5 questions, but we don't know what each other's questions are, and we ask each other these questions. So it could be something like, what's your favorite soundtrack, or the worst game you played, but we usually add a little more spice to it than that. So neither of us have heard these questions beforehand. Actually, I have a list from last year, my questions I asked last year. They were so good that I decided to bring back 2, but make 3 new ones. So nice. A little bit of old, but a lot of new.
I like that.
All right, here's my first secret question for Gabe.
And your answer it too, or will only I answer it? I can't remember how we
We'll both answer it. Okay. Like if we can both answer, we'll both answer it.
I see.
Okay, but let's be honest. Who would you romance in Metaphor ReFantazio?
Oh,
because
man.
You can't actually romance in
That's
this
a good
game,
one.
unlike other Persona games.
Wow, that is a really good one.
Yes.
Man, that's yep. I think I'm gonna have to go Yufa. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Yufa.
Okay.
Which, like, you know, right?
That would have been my pick, but I gotta go ahead.
Like, she kind of surprised me, honestly. Like at first I was sort of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this character type of thing. But then, like, I don't know, she kind of plays this sort of like in a way, I think from like a written perspective, it's kind of cool because she's almost like Zelda. It's almost like a take on Zelda when you really think about it. But anyway, she just has really cute little animations, and her voice and her whole demeanor, and I love her. She got a good vibe, like good outfits, you know. I feel like we could vibe.
For sure.
So
Yeah. The easy choice would be Juna, but your boy doesn't go for the easy choice.
That's a good one too.
I would romance Brigitte, the merchant.
Wow. Honestly,
Brigitte, she was like a classic hard exterior, but like soft interior, and I love cracking that. You know what I mean? Like I want the challenge of it all. So yeah, Brigitte would be who I would romance, but we can. It's not a game about romance. There's bigger things going on.
It's true. There are bigger things.
All right.
That's great. I love that.
Hit me with your first secret question.
Okay, this is great. I really like where you went with that one. My first secret question is... Sorry, one sec. Let me check the... I think we've had a couple little drop frames. Maybe just internet stuff. I apologize for that. But I think we're still kicking here, so I think we're fine. Anyways, all right. So my first secret question is, what is your 2024 gaming character blunt rotation? Do you know what a blunt rotation is? Jake had to explain it to me a couple years ago.
Yeah, explain it to me.
Okay, so
I have a good idea based off of context clues,
yes.
But let's get the details.
I mean, neither of us smoke weed. But like a blunt rotation is like if you're smoking weed with your friends, it's like you have like 4 people and you're kind of passing the blunt around. And so another way to phrase the question is, what are 4 characters that you think would like be really chill to vibe with? But like they have to vibe with each other too. So it's like what's like the 3 to 4 character blunt rotation? I'll let you answer first.
Okay. I'm gonna start with. I'm gonna take this in a weird direction. I would want. Oh shoot! What's his name? I can't think of his name. What's the lead in Space Marines 2?
Oh wow, that's a really good one. Marcus.
I don't think that's his name, but I would want the lead Space Marine that you play as in Space Marines 2. It's not Gadriel because that's the other one. I would want him with me because I just feel like maybe if our guy got a little bit looser, he could tell you some really good stories. You know what I mean? Like awesome. That's where I'm going with that.
I really did not expect
how
that.
How many do I have to do? How many do I have to do?
Give me 3. Give me 3.
Okay. And then from there, I would go with, since it has to be 2024 games, and I'm making like a roster that's going to get a little... To top it off, I have one it's too spoilery, so I won't go there. This is so tough. I'm going to go with my final spot. I will go with, what's his name? Names are tough. You play so many video games in a year.
It's so true.
And this one's especially tough because we played as much of this game as we could, but we were cut off. And there's a really special character in that game, and I want to remember his name, but I can't find it. Me and my crew. What was me and my crew's name? I can't remember the kid's name.
That's so funny. Wait, let me look it up.
Just because if you're putting together a crew, you need the guy from Concord. Whose line every time you pick him,
he deserves to be referred to as his name.
Me and my crew.
It was Daw.
So I got Titus, I got Kratos Astrobot, and I got Daw from Concord.
That's absurd.
Me and my crew.
Oh my god. That is so
All right, let's
funny.
hear yours.
That is honestly wow. You exceeded my expectations there. That is great. Okay, first blunt rotation guy is Geppetto from Raven's Watch. Because like,
oh my gosh, yeah, that guy's
guy
seen
lights
some
up
shit,
and like, oh man, he's gonna tell you some crazy stuff, dude.
Yes,
some crazy stuff. Then I'm gonna go Heisme from Metaphor, which is just like this old man bat guy. And then I'm gonna just go Mesmer from Elden Ring because he really needs to relax.
my guy needs to take it down several notches.
Notches. But like I feel like Heisme is really the guy that's just there to like make everyone feel really chill. And I think Geppetto and Mesmer, I think they would vibe legit. I think
like Heisme would like Mesmer would like at first he'd be like, Mesmer, bro, like chill out, man. And Heisme would like bring in like this really like this like worldly advice, this like anecdote that would get Mesmer to be like, yeah, no, you know what, you're right. Like I need to take a step back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
So great question, bro.
Love that.
That
Yours
revealed
really got
so
me.
much.
Yours really got me.
Okay, so my next question is one of my 2023 questions brought back because it is such a good question. Which game was the most Gabe game, and in what way did it bring that energy? And I wanted to ask it again because there were so many on your top 15 that brought a lot of Gabe energy.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's why I wanted to bring it back.
Okay, cool. So I won't say, I mean, an obvious answer would be Persona 3 Reload, but I won't say that. I will say Lorelei because this is it is such a weird Gabe game where like the more I looked into this game, like the developers were saying that it was like inspired by like French cinema and like random books I'd never heard of, and it just felt like so stupid in the way that I'm like, yeah, I'm probably gonna go watch that random French movie, you know. So that was surprising to me. It felt like very cinematic, and you know I love movies, so I thought that was kind of dope.
Yeah, my easy answer for that, I already kind of said earlier, was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. That game was destined to be a favorite of mine.
100%.
All right, let's go on to the next secret question from you.
Okay, favorite level or boss in a game this year?
I'm gonna say that is really good. Favorite level or boss? It's probably would be something from Erdtree. I want to say so tough. I mean, Mesmer was good, but we beat him so quickly.
Yeah.
But that was also like
was
so
really
cool that we beat him so quickly that we were like we were so locked in for that battle.
We were super
so
locked
it's hard. It's really hard to not go Mesmer. The only other one I'll say would be the snake boss in Astrobot was super hype.
That was
I
really
loved
hype.
that. There's a lot of good boss fights in Astrobot. I'm gonna go snake boss.
That's great. We got Miso Hungry, great username in the chat. Says, hey guys,
love
long time lurker, but just wanted to let you know how helpful your channel has been in finding games for my friends and my wife to play. Happy New Year. Appreciate you saying that, and Happy New Year to you too. That's what it's
super
all
happy to
about.
help.
So
that is what it's all about.
All
right, so what's your favorite boss and or level?
Man, okay, favorite level probably has to be something from Astrobot, but there's just so many I can't necessarily.
My favorite Astrobot level, I think, is the one that stuck with me is the casino level. That is so freaking such a good level. That was really cool. That or the mouse level.
Yeah, the mouse level was really great too. Favorite. So maybe I'll go favorite boss instead. Trying to think what was my favorite boss. I'm gonna go, and I mean I'll try not to spoil any of this for people in the chat, but I think it's what you maybe would say it's a second or third boss in Metaphor is just this crazy head, and I won't say anything else. Yes, but it's like it's basically a giant head, and it's just diabolical, honestly.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's one of those ones where I was playing in my living room and we have curtains that block like a window at the front of my house, and multiple times did I look over and be like, please God, tell me those windows are closed because I don't want anybody seeing me playing this wacky ass boss right now.
Literally so funny.
Great call out. All right, next question. You know, in life, I feel like we go through lots of ups and downs and middle grounds too. But I want to ask you, what was the game that gave you the most, like, you were always on one end of the spectrum. You were either really high or you were really low. Like, it could be frustration or fear or joy or hype or sadness. Because we play, you know, a lot of the co-op games, we have like a lot of hype moments. So like, what game gave you all of those things? You know what I mean?
You're saying like one emotion?
Well, not all of them, but like the most emotions in one experience. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go the negative spectrum here, and say that Surmount was the most frustrating game this year. Oh my god.
That's the right answer.
It was just like, so we played this little indie game that we didn't cover on the channel. You know, sometimes we cover games, we tend to cover mostly positive games, as in like we tend to cover games because we want to recommend them. We don't always see the use of like dunking on a game. We just like don't really do that. And even if we do a somewhat negative review, it's usually framed from the perspective of like, this wasn't for us, but it might be for you. And we just didn't really do that for Surmount because it just was really frustrating. And I'm just not sure that I don't know, maybe it's for some people out there.
I don't think we would have added anything to the ethos by being like, we did not, this was too frustrating for us. It felt like the game was broken the whole time we were playing it.
Yeah.
And yada yada. So,
but basically Surmount is...
Yeah, that's the right answer. A lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of laughs, a lot of what the heck are we doing right now?
to expound on a little bit, Surmount is this little indie game that's essentially like a rock climbing game. The art style is great. It looks like all the characters look like me characters in a cool way. It was like we were really excited for it, and it was just so frustrating. Like they just didn't totally nail the mechanics of it. It was super hard. Sometimes it was like really nonsensical. Like things that were supposed to work did not work. Things that like worked but then worked in a completely different way other times. Like I don't know, just was not very consistent. And yeah, there were just so many times. I mean, I think the last session we just ended it just like laughing as in like, this game's broken, like we're not playing this anymore. And so that was a bummer. So that's mine.
That's the correct answer. The backup would be Outlast Trials. We felt all the emotions. We had highs of joy, lows of frustration and fear. We we had hype moments, and there was not a lot in between. You know, you were always on some sort of emotional high or low while playing the Outlast Trials.
Yes, I agree with that.
All right. Next up, we probably should try and speed a little bit more through these questions. We got 5 more, but we're coming up close to our 2-hour mark that we were trying to hit. So.
Yes. Is it my turn?
Yes, your turn.
Okay. This is a fun one. I'll have to give a little bit of context, but the question is, which game from 2024 deserves a 2025 secret level episode? Or season 2, because it's not going to be in 2025. A season 2 secret level episode. So the context for the viewer here is secret level is an Amazon TV animated anthology series where every episode covers a different game. It is a really cool concept, but and I do recommend checking it out, but manage your expectations because the episodes are really short and not all of them hit. But the ones that do hit really hard, and I do think that season 2 will be, honestly, I think I'm expecting it to be a lot better. I felt like this season they just kind of needed to like prove a concept at all and then like get people invested in it, and I think season 2 will be better. So which game from this year do you think deserves a season 2 episode?
There are several games that would work for this, but a lot of them I wouldn't just want a one episode, like a 15 to 20 minute episode. I want like a whole series. So this is where it's key. You only want like a 15 to 20 minute episode. So that's where I think my answer is perfect, and it would be Helldivers 2.
Yes.
A like 15 to 20 minute episode of Helldivers 2 with the humor, the explosions of it all. And it would perfectly encapsulate. I'm sure they could find a way to like really like encapsulate like what does it feel like to go on a hell dive. Awesome. I feel like that would be such a good secret level. I'd be like shocked if it's not. I bet you it is. I bet you I just predicted one of the secret level episodes is going to be Helldivers 2.
That would be awesome.
I've come to the point in the last 5 seconds where I'd be upset if it's not.
Yeah.
I'm convinced it is. It's too late.
I love that.
But there's several several that I would like to have full shows, like Metaphor, or this is a good one, Raven's Watch, a full show of Raven's Watch.
That'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh, would that hit?
But
Helldivers 2 is the perfect example for that show. What about you?
Yeah, it's there's so many ways to answer this because it's tough because you're sort of like, well, it has to be a game that you also think like deserves an episode, you know, and like you think realistically could get one. So yeah, I'm thinking through and I'm trying to think like which ones could be cool. I could see a forest episode, The Forest or Sons of the Forest. Like I actually think they could do a lot with that. Like that could be kind of interesting. Like just like stuck on the island, the cannibals,
dude, yes,
like
that'd
a
be
horror game.
so good. What a great call.
And The Forest is like that's kind of like a cult classic at this point. So like I think I could see what I was gonna say Ravens Watch, but like realistically, I don't think we'd ever get a Ravens Watch. It's just kind of too small. But
it's too small. It would be cool. It'd be really cool. That was my runner-up was Ravens Watch
for sure. So I think the Sons of the Forest / Forest horror episode, that'd be kind of dope. And they didn't do anything horror this season, so they should do a horror episode of some kind. So that'd be interesting. Cool. Your turn.
This one's a little bit complicated. So, and we can do best soundtrack after this question, but in metaphor, there's an MVP to the soundtrack. It could be like a sound or a song or like sort of like a key theme to it. And obviously the MVP is metaphor is our chanting master. He's out there, he's like, oh yeah, like yes. That. He's the MVP of the soundtrack.
Yep.
Who is the other MVP of 2024? Is it a song? Is it like a trope within a game musically? Like, what's the other MVP? You need me to go first because it's a tough question. I can go first, but that's what I'm asking.
Okay. I have it. I have mine at least.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I do. To me, the other MVP I think of, and this is somewhat of a general concept, but it's like the sort of guide character. I feel like Metaphor had the guide character of like the fairy, right? Gallica. Cat Quest 3 had the guide character of the little blue ghost guy type of thing. And there were other games that had like a guide character that I thought like, I don't know, that felt like a MVP sort of thing to me. So maybe that's my way to answer that.
I would say my MVP, and if I'm going from like a sound perspective, would be I Am Astrobot.
That's good
because they lace that throughout. I am Astrobot, and they lace that throughout the whole soundtrack. It's in and out of the whole game.
Yep.
It carries the soundtrack in the same way that Mr. Chan carries Metaphor and Katsuyo's soundtrack. So
I love that.
Nice. I think that's great. I would have also accepted the whoever's playing like the violin in Ravens Watch. You know what I mean? Like how there's always that violin going in Ravens Watch, and it's just carrying you through like everything. Like when you go back to home, and it's like like that. Like come on now.
Yeah, that is great. I love that.
All right. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Game you didn't expect to hate / dislike.
Ooh. Let me look. I feel like I have. Oh, well, you're fishing, bro. You're fishing. The easy answer here is Dragon's Dogma 2. I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
Dragon's Dogma 2. I didn't expect to hate it because for the first 15 hours, I loved it. But it just slowly devolved into this absolute trash fire of an experience where it was like, I genuinely feel like they got through the first 2/3 of the game, and that might even be pushing it. And they were like, this is going really well, but like, yeah, we'd have to delay it like another 1.5 years to like really complete the experience. Like, let's just push them to the end of the game. They'll get there. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's what it feels like. It just feels like the last third of that game is so incomplete, so underbaked, that it takes all the goodwill you get from the first part of the game and like almost twists your mind to thinking like, well, that was good, but like, was it actually really bad? And it just completely throws off your perspective of the game to where it's like, I get why some people do love it, and some people like it's their game of the year. But for me, it is my least favorite game of the year because of how much it betrayed me by the end to making it like, I am not enjoying this. Now I feel like I've sunk all this time into this game, and like for what? For me to now have like a truly awful experience over and over and over again. So yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2. I loved the first 15 hours, and then from there it just slowly and then really quickly dove off a cliff.
Yeah. No.
How about you?
That would have been one of my answers for sure. I think I have maybe 2, maybe 3 actually. Like the bottom half of my list was like, man, what are we doing here? The Night Springs game I felt like was okay. The Night Springs DLC for Alan Wake 2. I just was like disappointed because like the whole premise of it is that in Alan Wake 2, there's like this TV show called Night Springs, and it's essentially their like in-universe version of the Twilight Zone, which already is just like, that's an awesome concept. And so then Night Springs, I obviously thought they were gonna do like something with that show, and then it just kind of turned out that they did like 3 different episodes of Night Springs, but they were really just like, they borrowed, I don't know, they just like repurposed some levels and some mechanics, and you did get to play as like different characters, but like you got to play as a girl from Control for one of the episodes, and that one was the worst one. I just felt so disappointed by it. Starfield Shattered Space DLC, another one that was like, that was fine, but like I think the price point definitely kind of hurts a little bit, because you're kind of like, man, like that did kind of drop the ball, and it was like 30-ish bucks or 40 bucks maybe, I don't remember. I think it was like 30 bucks. It's not great.
That's crazy. That's an expensive DLC.
Yeah, and then Thank Goodness You're Here is 25 out of 28 on my list, and that was kind of like an indie game that I thought I would really like, but it's just like dragged on, and it's a game that makes you retread a lot of levels to a point that like I really dislike. But then I would kind of chalk that one up a little bit more to the fact that like I'm not huge on British humor, and you really got to be huge on British humor if you want to play this game. Like I think that's a requirement.
Yeah.
So those are sort of my 3 that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Your last.
All right,
question.
last question from both of us. This is a repeat from last year, but it's a great question, so I had to bring it back. Which game are you putting in the backlog, but when you look in the mirror in the morning, you know you're a fraud for believing you're ever actually going to play it?
Wait, that's crazy. Well, because my last question was your number 1 backlog game, so we'll just go with yours. That's hilarious.
Okay, so we'll do both, because this is the one that you're putting on your backlog, but you know you're not going to play it. And then the other one is the one you're putting on your backlog, but you are going to play it.
Okay. Damn. Okay, so game from this year that I want to talk to myself and say that I'm going to play, but in reality, I'm probably not going to play.
Yes.
Shoot. I'm trying to think games that came out this year that are like...
You talked about one earlier that I don't think you're ever going to get to, but...
Yeah, Rebirth is probably one. I mean, that's tough because I do have to play Remake, so that's probably. I
mean, you're committing yourself to like potentially with the third game like 150 plus hours.
That is tough.
Which is insane.
That's
tough. Like 4 months of gaming.
You're right. That's probably, you know what? I'll go with that answer as an easy answer. I was maybe gonna say like Black Myth Wukong is one that I was like curious about, but like in reality, probably never gonna play. So those will be my 2. How about you?
I would say the game that's on my backlog that I know I'm probably never going to end up actually playing is Indiana Jones. Like I want, like everything in me is like, well, I'm going to play Indiana Jones. Like it's probably going to be the next game I play if I finish Meta 4 the next week. But then it's like when I really think about it, I'm not going to play Indiana Jones. That's not going to happen. I'm going to be getting into 2025 and like it's going to be the last thing on my mind is Indiana Jones. So I have it on my backlog and I feel like I'm going to play it, but if I'm honest with myself, I'm not going to play it.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to then go to the reverse, your final question, what game is number 1 on my backlog? In other words, which one will I play? Easy. I knew this from the second I saw it. Neva is for sure going to be played. I will play that game. And I'll probably play it pretty soon here, especially because it's a short game. That's the key to a backlog game is it should be shorter. For instance, last year when I asked you this question, I think it was Liza P. And I knew you weren't going to play Liza P. And you didn't play Liza P.
You know, it is still downloaded on my game.
It's also a long game.
It is a long game.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So yeah, those are my answers. It would be Indiana Jones. It's on my backlog. I doubt I'll probably ever play it, even though I want to, and I think I will. But Neva is also my backlog, and I'm for sure playing that as soon as possible.
Sick. My number 1 backlog I would have been Prince of Persia, but it's kind of cheating because I am playing it. But I'm not gonna beat it by this year. But I will say I think Nets in backlog would be Echoes of Wisdom. And I do think it has a positive aspect of the fact that you'll give me a physical edition, but then I feel like I have to
I'm going to see you in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have to beat it. I have a physical edition to return to you, you know? So it has that going for it.
Yeah.
So that I'll
and it's short. It's like 15 hours.
Yeah, and
tops.
that's not bad. So I'll lock that down. And you speak very highly of it, so I think it'll be worth it. Yes. Cool.
All right, with that, we have done our top 15 games of the year. We've done our honorable mentions. We even did our secret superlatives block. That is our 2024 in gaming. So perfect, too, that we did it on 12-30, the day before New Year's Eve. Could not time it better. Thank you guys all for watching and for participating in the chat or just lurking. We appreciate it. It's been a great show. I'm sure Gabe would agree. This is always a super fun stream, and it's been a great year. A great year for the channel in general.
Yes.
Maybe not in life in general, but for the channel in general, it's been a great year. Both Gabe and I talked about at the end of last year, a peek behind the curtains, that we needed to find a better way to continue to balance the bros with the rest of our life. We talked about before how this is not our full-time gig. It's not going to be anytime soon. Might not ever be. There's a good chance it's never. And we're okay with that. But we also are two guys with full-time jobs. So how do we learn to balance that? And in 2024, I think we found that. And it made it for me at least a really special year. I'm very grateful for 2024.
Yeah, no, totally could not agree with that. Could not agree more with that. Yeah, I'll definitely look back on 2024 in gaming as, it's interesting to think about, like, last year was such a, like, marquee moment in gaming, like, just completely unparalleled sort of year. And you kind of went into 24 thinking, like, man, like, it's just not going to stack up to that. But there are some really special games this year. And I think I'll look back on this year, actually, so many fun games that we played with, like, our best friends. From, like, Call of Duty to Raven's Watch to Helldivers to Warhammer. Played a lot of games with, like, our sort of, like, group of guys, and even with some other people on Discord. We got to play Helldivers was our friend Brandon, and then got to play 33 Immortals with Olarion from our Discord. So that was super fun to kind of get to play some games with some of our friends on Discord. I think that was really special. I'd love to have more of those experiences into 2025. I felt like I remembered that, like, yes, like, I want to play more, like, we obviously play games for the channel, and that's great, and we play our own single player games, but I think the sort of third pillar that sometimes falls to the wayside sometimes because we're so focused on either our own personal games but then also games for the channel is, like, I just kind of want to dive into that game just with our buds because it's fun, and I want to have more of that in the next year. So
this was a year where we got to do that, and it because it is a year sandwiched between two massive years, and we had a little more free time than we normally would have, and that meant that we got to play more of Helldivers 2 than we expected, and more of Raven's Watch, and it was nice to have a year where we didn't feel like we were constantly on our back heels trying to play as much as possible. It felt like, no, we could sit back and be like, let's play more Raven's Watch. Let's add more sessions to the calendar. I thought that was really cool, and I don't know if we're going to be able to accomplish that next year just because it looks like, hey, what's up, Olarion? You did make it into 2024 in gaming. I don't know if we're gonna pull it off next year, because next year looks like it's even crazier than 2023 was, especially from co-op. Like, this is a year where it feels like we're going into the year, and, like, some of the biggest games coming out this year are co-op games. So, it's a big year for the channel. We're going to try and balance it all in the same way we always do and give you guys all the stuff you need to know what games to play with you and your best friends. And I think we're both very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Alarion, we were just talking about you, how fun it was to play 33 Immortals. Sadly, we are ending the stream now. But if you're just watching it now or watching it later, thanks for coming and supporting us this year, as Andrew said, and we're so excited for next year.
Yep. All right, guys. See ya next year, 2025.
Night.
Bye.